All right, welcome to Take a Beat, where we talk about things that we talked about this past weekend. And this past weekend at IES, we had a panel Q&A about stronger families. And so we had actually a lot of questions. And so we want to make sure that all of these questions, if possible, are answered. And so we wanted to discuss them today. And so I am here with PD and Gigi and Josh. And so we are going to just dive into this bowl of questions. And so
I thought those were chips.
no chips. Chips sounds good. So Josh, why don't you pick
All right,
pick one.
I'll pick the first one first. What are the limits to intimacy for unmarried couples?
Phew, that's a good question.
That's a good
Who's going to answer that?
Do you want to
people who
answer?
are married? The people who are married? Or?
truth or dare.
Yeah. No, I got a great story. So I was in another country, and I was speaking at a youth camp, and then they had this question and answer thing, but they separated the boys and the girls, and then somebody asked the question in both places: is it all right for couples who aren't engaged to kiss? A little more conservative. And on the guy's side, the guy said, of course. On the girl's side, the youth pastor's wife said, no. So when we all sorted it out and I was sitting there having coffee with them, I said, so you had different answers on that. So who won out in your case? And they were like, that's too personal to ask, Pete.
Okay. What does that have to do with
Yeah. That has to do with how intimate you are, but yeah, not too many people are expecting me to say no kissing until you're engaged. So my answer would be, it depends on every person and every situation, and they should set limits wherever they are comfortable. It's hard to make a hard and fast rule. So it depends on the people, the situation, I guess. Yeah. I mean, it would be, I know people that could say, they never kissed until they were married, and that's fine, but that's not really the norm. I know people say couples that are dating shouldn't even hold hands, and that doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of spectrum across the range.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about this with teens, as you mentioned, Pete, I think boundaries are important.
Yeah.
The problem is that the world now is erasing these boundaries more and more, or kind of just making everything, just really pushing it, or just see how far you can go. And I mean, we've talked about this here, right? If
you're asking how far is too far, you're looking the wrong direction.
That's a good answer.
So, yeah.
Okay. Gigi?
I think there's still boundaries, but they've just extended it. Instead of like the godly way, the biblical way would be this way. Maybe, in the world they've just extended it. Okay. I have a funny story. That's why I was snickering about, but I'm not gonna tell it on your podcast.
She's saving it for our own podcast. The podcast we're going to call about PDGG.
Oh, okay. I better use my glasses so I make sure I'm reading the right question. All right. How would you sum up the biblical view on sex? That I think the biblical view, just in my own humble opinion, the biblical view on sex is that sex is God instituted, and it is just for husband and wife. So anything before that, or if a husband and wife is already married, obviously man and woman are already married, an extra beyond that is also, it's not what God's design. So I think that's what sums up what God's view is. He instituted sex. He wants people to enjoy each other, but in the context of husband and wife.
And I think that, psychologically and physiologically, there are dynamics at work that make two people be really, really, really close to each other. And that is a part of the whole thing of, the Bible talks about the two become one flesh. It really is about everything, but the kind of the glue there is the sexual relationship. And that's why using it outside of marriage is dangerous, because you're connecting yourself to people without any assurance that you can trust them, and without any assurance that you're going to be with them. And so I think that's what God invented sex for.
Yeah.
All right,
PD?
my turn. All right.
Truth or dare?
Yeah, truth or dare. All right. Oh, I picked up 2.
Oh.
My child went to church since he was young until he was a teenager. Now that he's an adult in his 20s, he says he doesn't believe in God. What should I do? Well, number 1, you pray for them. That's the most important thing. Number 2, you don't treat them different. You don't treat them like you're disappointed with them. You don't treat them like you're unhappy with them. You pray for them, and you listen to what they have to say. I think obviously every parent just agonizes over every stage of our kids' lives, much less something so profoundly important. So what you do is you build the best relationship you can. You're there for them in all situations, because if they don't believe in God, then sometimes they're going to really struggle and they don't have a place to turn. So they need to know they can turn to you. Don't make them feel that they're disappointed, you're disappointed, or and don't think you did something wrong. God has no grandchildren. Yeah, everybody has to make it a decision to follow the Lord. Now, we should do everything we can to help our kids grow up to know the Lord. And the one thing that really helps that is if we have a sincere and honest relationship with God, their kids grow up seeing that. But we should receive that they're not there yet, and so we try and do everything we can to help them to understand and answer questions.
Yeah, I think for me, not married, don't have kids, but with former teens who sometimes I would meet up with them for coffee or for a meal, and some of them they come right out and say they're like, I don't believe in God anymore. Or one of them, when I was in the States, was saying, oh, I'm an agnostic, but Christianity is still my favorite. If I have to choose. I was like, oh, okay.
You have to choose.
And I think what I realize is some of these questions when they're saying this is the question is really, even if I don't believe in this, will you still love me? Or will you still be there? Will you change in your approach, or will you be disappointed in me? And so I think when you were saying, oh, don't treat them differently, I think that's what I would say as well.
There's a story in the Bible where the snake tells this lady in a garden, look, there's a durian over there on that tree, and it's such a good-looking fruit, you should try it. And she does. A lot of kids that say they don't believe anymore, they still believe, but they're just trying the fruit. They want to just see, and they grow up in a world where people say, yeah, being a Christian, you don't have any fun, you don't have this, you don't have that. And they just want to see if there are better options. Yeah.
Okay. Why am I nervous?
You win. A refrigerator.
Speaking of Eve, in Genesis 1, it says that Eve was created from Adam's rib and was created after Adam. So does that mean that females are somehow lesser than males?
All right, let me answer that really quickly. God created, a man could not survive alone. So God created Eve, who apparently can survive alone. But when she was created, she made it possible for Adam to survive. And the word that's used to describe her is a helper. And that is not a diminishing term, because as I mentioned on our Q&A today, that specific word is actually used to describe when God helps us. So is it saying that Eve was godlike in some ways? Yeah, in some ways. And then on top of that, we need to understand that, the Bible's really clear. Jesus said, the one that's greatest is the one who serves. So even if you want to believe that women are somehow created to serve men, and that's not what the Bible says, you would still understand in a Christian way that makes them superior. So yeah, it doesn't make the women inferior at all. Men can't survive without women.
That's right. Amen. So you know who's the greatest in our family, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You should probably
Is it okay for me to say that?
Is anything wrong with not remarrying when one spouse goes to be with the Lord?
Is there anything wrong with remarrying or not
With
remarrying?
not remarrying.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, if you read 1 Corinthians 6 and 7 and 8 in there, it's kind of the guidelines or the rules for how Christians should behave with marriage, divorce, death, engagement, all those kind of things. And Paul says those who are unmarried, so he means, by unmarried, he means those people who were married. And he doesn't specify whether their spouse died or whether their spouse was divorced or left them or whatever. He says if you can remain unmarried, that's good because then you have more freedom. But if you want to be married, it's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. So both are acceptable options. Absolutely.
I'm not stinging. Would do it again. Why are these all so small? Ooh, how can I overcome being parented badly? I hope it's not Isabel who asked this question. My daughter. No, I'm just kidding. So, how do I overcome? You wanna answer that, Dave?
That's really tough because there are a lot of people who have bad parents.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I grew up in a very loving home, but certainly my parents were far from perfect. And there were seasons of my life growing up that it was really, really hard for me. And so as an adult, when the Lord met me, when the Lord found me, that was probably, that was a turning point for me to be able to overcome the things that was difficult growing up. Or, my parents were, that was no abuse or anything like that. I'm not insinuating anything bad, but, there were times when I felt like, just to touch on one area of my relationship with my parents growing up, they were very, very strict and unreasonably strict. But the Lord, with my relationship with God, when I knew the Lord and gave Him my heart, it really helped me with the healing process. And I know a lot of people who were parented badly and still turned out okay because of precisely of that encounter with Jesus. And I think that's the first step. And I think one of the things too that can help you would be making the decisions that maybe you wish your parents had made when you were growing up. So you go the direction where you think it should go. Because as an adult, you make all those choices. You cannot blame any longer the things that maybe growing up the parents did to you. But first, like I said, first is having a relationship with God, and next is making the right choices. Yeah, making the right choices.
That's good.
I think, like, for me, after I preached a couple weeks ago, a few people came up to me and said, "Oh, you had great parents, but I didn't have great parents." And I actually shared this with them that my dad didn't have great parents.
Yeah.
And so for him, he really relied on God to help him. And there's this one thing that he actually used for a lot of his sermon illustrations, but he remember asking God, how do I parent this girl? And he didn't know what to do with and
it was you that
Yeah,
made it even harder.
I know. And then God was the one who showed him oh, this is how you love your daughter. And yeah, so I think definitely what Gigi said.
All right. My mom did something that hurt not only me, but our family. How do I go about forgiving her? How do I honor her knowing the stuff she's done? That's a really good question. All right, let me answer it this way, okay? Number one, how do I go about forgiving her? Well, remember, forgiveness does not mean that you agree with something or you cover up something that was done wrong. Forgiveness, the best way to understand forgiveness is that you're going to say, I'm going to withhold punishment for that person. I'm not gonna punish them for what they did, which in the form of punishment may be, you distance yourself from them, or you talk badly about them, or if it's your mom, when you have kids, you would keep your kids away from her, and all. So that's the one issue. You need to forgive your mother no matter what. And remember, forgiveness is necessary for you. It also helps them, but forgiveness is necessary for you. How do I honor her knowing the stuff she's done? You honor her for the things that are good. You don't have to pretend the things that were done were right. You honor her for the things that are good. You have to be honest about it. So you don't go around telling people the bad things she did, but there were good things that she did, and you can appreciate those things, and you can even say to your mother, thank you that you did this, thank you that you did that. Now, if she's still doing bad things, it makes it even more complicated. And this is where it's really important for us to understand the nature of sin is to tear down and destroy. And make sure that you do everything you can that you don't allow your mother's sin to tear your life down and the life of your family down, and to destroy the reputation, just destroy the relationship that you should have with her. And the relationship that's not built on the things she did right or wrong, the relationship that's built on she's your mother and you love her and you do your best. So it's a really great question, and it's really tough.
Just to add into that, PD, like I said, when you forgive, you're also forgiving for yourself.
Okay.
And I think it was you, honestly, PD. I remember, because it stuck with me. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, or it might be somebody else, but I think I know this from you. You said that you don't hold on to grudges, grudges hold on to you.
No, that's good. I never said that, but it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I said that.
Yeah, okay, Sister Gigi. But no, I feel
That's
like it's
really true. That's really
it's-
good.
That's so
oftentimes we hold on to grudges, but really they're the ones that
Yeah.
hold on to us. And so
Yeah. The one I always use is not forgiving is like drinking poison, hoping the other person will die.
yeah.
Maybe a little strong.
That's a bit more direct.
Yeah, that's right.
we have a saying in English. It says that you cut off your nose to spite your face. I think not forgiving is like that.
Yeah.
You think you are doing something to the other person to make it hard for them, but really it's yourself that you're hurting.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Ooh,
These are really good questions. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it.
yeah. How do you get your teens to open up to you?
Oh. In our case, it wasn't hard. Our daughter, we always talked very openly with our daughter. She was allowed to express her opinion. She was allowed to say, I can tell you the different times at different ages where she would say to me, you're not being fair, or, da, da, da. And because that was our methodology from the very time she was very little. And so that's a big difference for us, I think.
I mean, I also have a really good relationship with both of my parents. I could talk about a lot of things, but I think one of the things that I realize with teenagers now, it just starts by you being there. And I think a lot of parents, because of their work schedule, their responsibilities, their idea of being there for their teen is when it's convenient for them. Mm-hmm. So it's after a long day, I have an hour that I'm going to give to you. And so tell me what's going on in your life. But at that time, the teen might be stressing out over their math test that's happening tomorrow. And they're not going to want to talk about other stuff. And I think it's just always like, again, just being less selfish and more selfless, and like realizing that it's not about us.
Yeah.
And so like when it comes to making time for your kid or your teenager, being available, it can't just be on your terms or what's convenient
That's really good,
for you.
Josh. It's really good.
Yeah. If you can't tell, Josh is the teens pastor at IES. If you have a teenager, please send them to IES
Yes.
Teens.
Not only that, he's a teens pastor. He once was a teen.
That's right.
Yes.
Hey, not only that, but we hear all the time about our parents talking about quality time and quantity time. You may think it's quality time. Quality time is not enough for a kid. They need your time when it's inconvenient for you.
Yeah.
And they need time, just time. It doesn't need to be a profound discussion or anything else like that.
And I think also with parents, rather than like when you have the time, you dictate everything. I think taking the time to just listen and do what maybe the teen wants to do, rather than saying, okay, we are going to have quality time. This is what you're going to do. This is what I want you to do. And then I feel like that defeats the purpose.
Yeah, we're going to have family time. You're going to sit in the back on a vacation where I want to go. Oh, that's wonderful. That's really good quality.
Hush.
Who's turn now?
All right. I'm dating a guy and my mom doesn't approve. We've been in a relationship for a while and don't know how to move forward. How do I honor my mom in this?
Ooh.
PD, Gigi.
Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I think that's a loaded question.
Mike. Your
Oh,
mic.
yeah, my mic.
Sister Gigi.
No?
I think we're now past truth or dare. It is hot potato.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's a tough one.
There are a
I'm-
lot of parameters that
Yeah,
really change the
obvious-
answer
yeah.
to that.
Yeah, there's obviously such a general question. You need to know the details to be able to really, advise that person who asked. But I would say that the Bible says if you seek wisdom, ask the Lord, and He will give you wisdom. There isn't really like an answer to that particular question, but I'm whoever asked that question, I'm praying for you.
Yeah.
I'm praying for God's wisdom, and if you need to talk to somebody, all of us here are available. Just reach out.
I would say that you should probably try and find out from your mom or the parent involved why they don't like that person, and like maybe you're like 22 years old and the guy's 8 years older and he's the pastor of your church and he wants to ask you
Speaking
out.
from experience, I think.
Yeah, something like that. But really, one of the ways you honor your parents is by listening to them. If you're old enough to make decisions on your own, then you can make decisions in an honoring way. Your parents know you. They probably have a lot of good ideas and good opinions, and they may see things you don't see. So you need to listen and have a conversation about it. And the fact that you're seeing the person without them knowing is not really a good sign, if I understood the implication there. But it should be openly discussed. You should be honest. Whatever you do, you can't be lying about it, right? So, all right.
Oh, my turn. Is it my turn?
Oh, I thought we were down to the last two, and if you pull that off, there's two ones hidden underneath.
Wow, this is a long one. My daughter wants to go to counseling. Is that biblical? Of course it is. Does that mean we don't trust God enough? How do I love my daughter the right way in this situation? Dave?
Well, I would say that the first thing is to understand that Christian counseling is very biblical. You can find all kinds of situations where one person's in the Bible talk to another person to help them out. If your daughter if she feels she needs to have counseling, then it's appropriate to approach to get help for Christian counseling. And at the very worst, it won't hurt. I mean, they would at least have an opportunity to ask, and it may be a really good way to let your child know you really care about them, that you're willing to make the effort to, do what's involved of finding a right counselor and things like that. And given the situation and given the reason, you can contact us at the church. We can advise different Christian counselors. Sometimes pastoral staff can also be involved in that. It is a good thing. It is a godly thing. It's better than being rebellious. It's better than going out and doing things. if they want to articulate that they need help, that's a good thing.
And I think just to add into that, I think at times when speaking to parents and there's counselors and therapists involved, it's kind of like you're handing over your child, expecting them to fix the situation or your child. And I can only encourage whoever asks this question to continue journeying and being there with your teen or with your child. It's not that like you're sending them off to, I mean, yes, there are professionals and I'm sure they'll help, but be there for your kid even as they go through that.
And let me add, as often and as far as possible, work with Christian counselors, because there's a lot of really bad advice out there.
And wanting to meet a Christian counselor does not mean that you're somehow less of a Christian.
Yeah.
I think having people walking alongside you, especially Christians who can pray for you, I think that's community too, and that's journeying together too.
No, that's really good. All right.
Can we have chips after this?
Yeah, I'm thinking about. What do you think, babe? Taco Bell on the way home? All right. What difference does it make if you choose to get married or not? Isn't a lifelong commitment to someone the issue and not just a legal document? Yeah, in our modern day society, the commitment is the legal document. So, during the time the Bible, the New Testament was written, specifically under the Romans, but there was no document involved in marriage or anything else like that. The reason we have it in a modern world today is because there are all kinds of legal issues about money and responsibility and all those things like that. When somebody tells me, I'm committed to them, I don't need a piece of paper to prove that, I really find that hard to believe. Usually there's a person who has a reluctance or a need to prove some kind of a thing. Very seldomly do you find that both would prefer not to have some kind of a document. And, there are legal issues and different things like that. I think a lifelong commitment's really, really good. But a part of a lifelong commitment is a legal commitment to the other person.
Right.
And if you're saying, I'm willing to make a commitment, but not a legal commitment, that's not a commitment.
That's right.
Right?
It's partial commitment. Yeah, and I when my mom passed away, I had to, I was the heir, and I had to have here in Indonesia, you have to have a surat waris. And then it really based on my mom married my dad and they had to list all of the kids, and that's your legal inheritors. So I'm like, there's a lot of just legal implication to this commitment.
Absolutely.
How can I, as a parent, help my child who is dealing with depression and anxiety? I want him to be more involved in ministry at church, but he's always on his phone. I think for me, I understand, and I think Josh can speak on this as well, but a lot of teenagers have been, their life is online. Their life is on their phones. But also, the pandemic really affected everyone. We did everything on our devices. I have a job because of that.
Yeah.
The digital pastor. But also, I think when addressing the whole, I want my teen to minister, I was like, why don't you start ministering? Or ministering as a family, so it's not like, go do ministry, but as a family we're going to minister together.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of opportunities in the church for whole families, especially with mission stuff. So do that.
Greeters too, right, PD?
Yeah.
It'd be great if we have
Yeah.
a family greeting.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take the last.
Last one. One
right.
step closer to dinner.
Did Jacob wrestle and Abraham negotiated really change God's will? Do our prayers actually persuade the Lord, or are we just learning to align to His will?
Yeah. from a theological point of view, that's a great question. A lot of that has to do with issues of God's sovereignty and free will and things like that. And what the Bible says to us is that we're supposed to pray about things, all right? And the Bible clearly says us, God is moved by our prayers and God answers our prayers. And there's a very clear understanding. Now, people will tell you now, you got all these things. So God says yes, God says no, God says grow, God says slow, all these different things. And those are, good and clever answers. But what's really clear is that we're supposed to be praying. And of course, we would say, Abraham negotiated with God about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and Jacob wrestled, with an angel. Does God change his mind? God allows people to participate in his plan. Will he fulfill his plan without their participation? Yeah, he will. But they have that opportunity. So that's the way I see it. So yeah, first of all, prayer changes me more. And then secondly, I'm given an opportunity. Great quote by C.S. Lewis that I've put up a few times. And it says, you will certainly fulfill God's plan, but it makes a big difference to you whether you fulfill it like John or like Judas. And it's a great quote. And that's I would say that would be the real answer to that.
I think, how do you know, though, if in your prayer you've actually changed? I mean, who knows? The Bible says our thoughts are not like God's thoughts. And so if we are praying, is prayer like a commodity? The more I pray, the more then I can persuade God to answer me the way I want him to answer me? Of course not. But I think it's a matter of obedience. That's part of our walk with the Lord is to pray. And whether or not he changes because he changes his mind, or it changes his answer based on how intense our prayers are, we don't really know, right? We don't know how we don't know. So a lot of it is just trusting the Lord that when he told us to pray, and it says pray and keep on praying, right? And knock and keep on knocking. Yeah. And let's not worry about whatever kind of response. But when we're obedient, I think God takes care of us really well. So,
and then one more thing I want to say is that we have a tendency to sort of turn God into a human to figure out what's going on. So, if I ask you a question, if I ask for this, would you have given it to me anyway if I didn't ask for it? And
of course not.
And then and we try and do that, like with God. Yeah. And people say, well, how can God give us free will and still accomplish his will? Because we can't really do that. Yeah, that's the point. He's God. So I try and get people this is one of the things I tell people. We have 8 billion people in the world, and each of them has absolute free will. We all have absolute free will. All of us have absolute free will, and that does not impact God's plan being fulfilled at all. Yeah. When I get up in the morning, downstairs there's bugs, and what those bugs do that morning does not impact my life at all. And the distance between them and me is minuscule compared to the distance of me and God. So I pray because God tells me to pray. He answers my prayer. I don't understand how that works. And if I don't do what he wants me to do, he's given me this opportunity to be involved, but he can use anybody else, and he can do it any other way. So why would I not want to be a participant in that?
I think that's a good question to wrap it up. Also, we're out of chips.
Yay.
The judge is like, I don't have to answer anymore.
I'm not coming back if there aren't real chips in there the next.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of Take a Beat. I've had fun. Great questions. Thank you for asking the questions. If you still have questions or concerns, or you would like to follow up, you can contact either one of us. I'm sure. I love like how I'm talking for everyone. But you can also connect with us on Instagram or Facebook or our online community, or comment below, and we'll get to you somehow. But thank you so much, and tune in next week for Take a Beat.
Yay.